Hello and welcome to another thrilling installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This is our second one, so we'll be starting with chapter 5. The rabbit sends in a little bill. Just in case. I don't think anybody's here who wasn't here yesterday, so I don't need to recap. But, Alice, she's in Wonderland. There's a rabbit. I think you guys know this stuff.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's been eating and drinking and growing and shrinking. Oh, I didn't even mean to rhyme. A poet and I didn't even know it.
Making friends and oppressing people.
What?
It's a British travel guide, how to make friends and oppress people.
Wow, that's very British.
Not actually the actual travel guide, obviously.
Right, yeah.
But it's
it
does seem to be how Alice is. She has not made herself welcome.
No, she's being extremely British.
Yes.
She's exceedingly British.
Yes. The Becky of all Beckys.
Queen's English and all that. Okay, so shall we get into it? Chapter 5. The rabbit sends in a little bill. It was the white rabbit, trotting slowly back again and looking anxiously about it as it went, as if it had lost something, and she heard it muttering to itself, the Duchess, oh, my dear paws, oh, my fur and whiskers, she'll get me executed as sure as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?" Alice guessed in a moment that it was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves, and she very good-naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool, and the great hall with the glass table and the little door had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she went hunting about and called out to her in an angry tone, "Why, Marianne, what are you doing out here?" Excuse me. "What are you doing out here?" There's a little emphasis on the R. Sounds more British that way.
It does.
"Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now." And Alice was so much frightened that she ran off at once in the direction it pointed to, without trying to explain the mistake it had made. "He took me for his housemaid," she said to herself as she ran. "How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am. But I'd better take him his fan and gloves, that is, if I can find them." And as she said this, she came upon a neat little house, on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved upon it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs, in great fear lest she should meet with the real Marianne and be turned out of the house before she had found the fan and gloves.
I can see that that's a problem.
Yeah, you find the real Marianne and go,
God.
"Oh, you must be Marianne. Yes, the rabbit sent me to tell you to bring him the gloves and fan, and then you can go back to being a troublemaker."
Yeah.
She's not super logical, though. No. "How queer it seems," Alice said to herself, "to be going messages for a rabbit. I suppose Dinah'll be sending me on messages next." And she began fancying the sort of thing that would happen. "Miss Alice, come here directly and get ready for your walk." "Coming in a minute, nurse, but I've got to see that the mouse doesn't get out." "Only I don't think," Alice went on, "that they'd let Dinah stop in the house. That they'd let Dinah stop in the house if it began ordering people about like that." Very weird sentence.
Yeah. It's a weird...
Stop in the house?
Yeah, and then she refers to Dinah as
it. Yeah, that's also weird.
Yeah.
Previously she said she, so...
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, if you've gone to the trouble of giving it a name...
Yes.
Generally you... Whatever.
Children don't think sensibly, or sensically, says Tila.
That is true.
Maybe true.
It's true.
Okay. By this time, she had found her way into a tidy little room with a table by the window. Oh, with a table in the window. And on it, as she had hoped, a fan and two or three pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and a pair of the gloves and was just going to leave the room when her eye fell upon a little bottle that stood near the looking-glass. There was no label this time with the words, "Drink me," but nevertheless she uncorked it and put it to her lips. Kids, don't drink bottles you find that tell you to drink them. But definitely don't drink random bottles you find that don't tell you to drink them.
Yeah.
Don't drink random bottles that you find lying around. Especially don't drink
or
something
eat random things.
Yeah. I actually don't drink random bottles that you find out just wherever because it might be dangerous. Don't drink a bottle you find in someone else's house because they might not want you to drink it. I think that's the main thing. I mean, yeah, you might also drink something dangerous in someone else's house, but it's way more likely in someone else's house that you would just drink something and they'll be like, that was mine.
Yeah.
I was saving it.
Alice would definitely do that.
Yes. Yes, Teal says this is why the green dead face stickers were invented. Not to prevent children from drinking other people's drinks, though.
No.
It could have been. It could be something perfectly
sticker.
Wholesome, but maybe the white rabbit was saving it for later. You know, just
Yeah.
don't do that without asking.
Just be careful about the things that you put into your body.
Yeah.
In general.
If it's not yours, don't eat or drink it without asking someone. And if it doesn't belong to anyone, definitely don't eat or drink it. I know something interesting is sure to happen, she said to herself, whenever I eat or drink anything. So I'll just see what this bottle does. I do hope it'll make me grow large again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing. It did so indeed, and much sooner than she expected. Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling and had to stoop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, saying to herself, "Oh, that's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out the door. Oh, I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much." Also, it just seems like if you're in a place, this is not advice to children, this is general logic. If you're in a place where you realize eating and drinking things makes you grow or shrink, and you find something, and you are hoping that you will either grow or shrink, at least leave the building that you're in, and then take one sip, and just see what happens before you drink half the bottle.
The logic.
You foolish girl.
It is not there.
Yeah, Michelle says, I leave my potion of giantess sitting on the table at random all the time.
Yes.
Also, if you go into fairyland, don't eat or drink things. I mean, in Wonderland, it just makes you grow and shrink. But traditionally, if you're in fairyland and you eat or drink things,
you have to stay.
You might have to stay. So this is she's lucky. She just has weird size issues.
She really is.
Yes, Taylor says trials are important. Very true.
Yes.
Alas, it was too late to wish that. She went on growing and growing, and very soon had to kneel down on the floor. In another minute, there was not even room for this, and she tried the effect of lying down with one elbow against the door, and the other arm curled about her head. Still, she went on growing, and as a last resource, she put one arm out of the window and one foot up the chimney, and said to herself, "Now I can do no more, whatever happens. What will become of me?"
You really don't know.
Yeah, Teal says, honestly, at this point, I've had enough. I want to go live with the Fae. Well, honestly, these days, might be an improvement. I saw a great tweet recently that was like, imagine the damage a Fae could do in a grocery store, bakery, like cake decorating department, just getting people's names and handing out food all day long. Okay. Luckily for Alice, the little magic bottle had now had its full effect, and she grew no larger. Still, it was very uncomfortable, and there seemed to be no sort of chance of her ever getting out of the room again. No wonder she felt unhappy. It was much pleasanter at home, thought poor Alice, when one wasn't growing larger and smaller and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. I almost wish I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole. And yet, it's rather curious, this sort of life. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales, I fancied that kind of thing never happened, and now here I am in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me, and there ought. That there ought. And when I grow up, I'll write one. But I'm grown up now, she added in a sorrowful tone. At least there's no room to grow any more here. But then, thought Alice, shall I never get any older than I am now? That'll be a comfort one way, never to be an old woman. Ooh, how horrible.
Indeed.
But then, always to have lessons to learn. Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice, she answered herself. How can you learn lessons in here? Why, there's hardly room for you and no room at all for any lesson books. And so she went on, taking first one side and then the other, and making quite a conversation of it altogether. But after a few minutes, she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. Mary Ann, said the voice. Fetch me my gloves this moment. Then came a little pattering of feet on the stairs. Alice knew it was the rabbit coming to look for her, and she trembled till she shook the house, quite forgetting that she was now about 1,000 times as large as the rabbit and had no reason to be afraid of it. Presently, the rabbit came up to the door and tried to open it. But as the door opened inwards and Alice's elbow was pressed hard against it, that attempt proved a failure. Alice heard it say to itself, "Then I'll go round and get in at the window." That you won't, thought Alice, and after waiting till she fancied she heard the rabbit just under the window, she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get a hold of anything, but she heard a little shriek and a fall and a crash of broken glass, from which she concluded it was just possible it had fallen into a cucumber frame or something of that sort. Kids, that would be a little glass greenhouse in which you might grow cucumbers.
This is the second British book that I heard that word in.
Talking about a cucumber frame.
Yes.
The picture has helped me to come to that conclusion.
Mr. McGregor has them in his garden.
Oh, does he have cucumber frames?
Yes.
I don't think I realized that cucumbers needed particular warmth to grow, but now I know.
Well, especially in England.
Well, yes, they do love their cucumbers out there, Nothing worse than not being able to get any cucumbers, not even for ready money.
Much less unready money.
Well, that's credit,
Oh, gotcha.
Wink. Okay, nowadays people are fine with credit because
that is true. Yes,
there's a little more guarantee that it will actually be paid.
Yes.
All right. Next came an angry voice, the rabbit's. Pat! Pat! Where are you? And then a voice she had never heard before. Sure then I'm here, digging for apples, Your Honor. Digging for apples, indeed, said the rabbit angrily. Here, come and help me out of this. Sounds of more broken glass. Now tell me, Pat, what's that in the window? Sure, it's an arum, Your Honor. He pronounced it arum. This is how I knew to say it that way. An arm, you goose. Whoever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window. Sure it does, Your Honor, but it's an arm for all that. Well, it's got no business there at any rate. Go and take it away. There was a long silence after this, and Alice could only hear whispers now and then, such as, Sure, I don't like it, Your Honor, at all, at all. Do as I tell you, you coward. And at last she spread out her hand again and made another snatch in the air. This time there were 2 little shrieks, and more sounds of broken glass. What a number of cucumber frames there must be, thought Alice. I wonder what they'll do next. As for pulling me out of the window, I only wish they could. I'm sure I don't want to stay in here any longer. There, Aaron says an arm is an arm for all that and all that. I assume this guy is a gardener, and he's probably supposed to be Scottish, because gardeners in British books are usually Scottish.
Yes.
Agatha Christie loved a Scottish gardener.
I feel like they're Scottish in every single thing
I've
read.
I never noticed the trend until you mentioned it, and now I've been reading a bunch of Agatha Christie, and it's like, every gardener you meet is Scottish.
Yeah,
except
in P.G. Woodhouse too.
There's only one gardener I've come across in an Agatha Christie book that wasn't Scottish, and he was only given the position of gardener because he was the illegitimate son of the house's owner. So that was like a special exception.
Right.
I forgot I was supposed to be keeping this kid friendly. Mommy, what's an illegitimate son?
Someone who can't read, dear.
Exactly. Okay. She waited for some time without hearing anything more. At last came a rumbling of little cartwheels and the sound of a good many voices all talking together. I think this means actual wheels on a cart, not someone doing cartwheels, just so the kids understand.
Kids who are watching.
The kids that are definitely watching this. And the sound of a good many voices all talking together. She made out the words. Where's the other ladder? Why, I hadn't to bring but one. Bill's got the other. Bill! Oh, Bill, fetch it here, lad. Here, put 'em up in this corner. No, tie 'em together first. They don't reach half high enough yet. Oh, they'll do well enough. Don't be particular. Here, Bill, catch hold of this rope. Oh, no, I think maybe this is Bill and Pat now. I don't know who's talking, so I don't know which voices to do here.
Yeah.
Here, Bill, catch hold of this rope. Will the roof bear? Mind that loose slate. Oh, it's coming down. Ed's below. A loud crash. Now, who did that? It was Bill, I fancy. Who's got to go down the chimney? Nay, I shan't. You do it. That I won't, then. Bill's to go down. Here, Bill, the master says you're to go down the chimney. Oh!
Poor Bill.
So Bill's got to come down the chimney, has he? Said Alice to herself. I don't know why I said that. Oh, he keeps a manservant, does he? I don't know why I said that like Lady Catherine. Shy, they seem to put everything upon Bill. I wouldn't be in Bill's place for a good deal. This fireplace is narrow, to be sure, but I think I can kick a little. She drew her foot as far down the chimney as she could, and waited till she heard a little animal, she couldn't guess what sort it was, scratching and scrambling about in the chimney close above her. Then, saying to herself, "This is Bill," she gave one sharp kick and waited to see what would happen next. The first thing she heard was a general chorus of, "There goes Bill!" Then the rabbit's voice alone, "Catch him, you by the hedge!" Then silence, and then another confusion of voices. "Hold up his head. Brandy now. Don't choke him. How was it, old fellow? What happened to you? Tell us about it." Last came a little feeble, squeaking voice. "That's Bill," thought Alice. "Well, I hardly know. No more, thank ye. I'm better now. But a deal too flustered to tell you. All I know is something comes at me like a jack-in-the-box, and up I goes like a skyrocket." "So you did, old fellow," said the others. "We must burn the house down," said the rabbit's voice. And Alice called out as loud as she could, "If you do, I'll set Dinah at you." Very threatening. Yes. Your cat, which is not there, and you refer to her by her name, which they don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I shall show you the illustration of Bill.
Yes.
So I guess I was waiting till they said that Bill was a lizard before I showed the illustration, but they don't seem to be saying it. So I guess Alice doesn't know that, but we're allowed to know.
Yes.
Poor Bill.
There goes Bill.
Poor Bill.
Oh no, Mr. Bill.
There was a dead silence instantly, and Alice thought to herself, I wonder what they will do next. If they had any sense, they'd take the roof off. After a minute or two, they began moving about again, and Alice heard the rabbit say, "A barrowful will do to begin with." A barrowful of what? Thought Alice, but she had not long to doubt, for the next moment a shower of little pebbles came rattling in at the window, and some of them hit her in the face. "I'll put a stop to this," she said to herself, and shouted out, "You'd better not do that again," which produced another dead silence. Alice noticed with some surprise that the pebbles were all turning into little cakes as they lay on the floor, and a bright idea came into her head. If I eat one of these cakes, she thought, it's sure to make some change in my size, and as it can't possibly make me larger, it'll make me smaller, I suppose.
That's a very bright idea, Alice.
Good logic, Alice.
That's how you got into this mess.
So she swallowed one of the cakes and was delighted to find that she began to shrinking directly. As soon as she was small enough to get through the door, she ran out of the house and found quite a crowd of little animals and birds waiting outside. The poor little lizard, Bill, was in the middle, being held up by 2 guinea pigs who were giving it something out of a bottle. They all made a rush at Alice the moment she appeared, but she ran off as hard as she could and soon found herself safe in a thick wood. Yeah, I don't know whether that was their intent. I don't know if them throwing pebbles into the house, which turned into cakes so that she would shrink, was actually their plan all along. I honestly don't know. It's really quite hard to say.
Not sure how
Wonderland.
much intent exists in the story at all.
Yes. The first thing I've got to do, said Alice to herself as she wandered about in the wood, is to grow to my right size again. And the second thing is to find my way into that lovely garden. I think that will be the best plan. It sounded an excellent plan, no doubt, and very neatly and simply arranged. The only difficulty was that she had not the smallest idea how to set about it, and while she was peering about anxiously among the trees, the little sharp bark just over her head made her look up in a great hurry. An enormous puppy was looking down at her with large round eyes, and feebly stretched out one paw, trying to touch her. Poor little thing, said Alice in a coaxing tone, and she tried hard to whistle to it, but she was terribly frightened all the time at the thought that it might be hungry, in which case it would be very likely to eat her up in spite of all her coaxing. Hardly knowing what she did, she picked up a little bit of stick and held it out to the puppy, whereupon the puppy jumped into the air off all its feet at once with a yelp of delight and rushed at the stick and made believe to worry it. Then Alice dodged behind a great thistle to keep herself from being run over, and the moment she appeared on the other side, the puppy made another rush at the stick and tumbled head over heels in its hurry to get a hold of it. Then Alice, thinking it was very like having a game of play with a cart horse, and expecting every moment to be trampled under its feet, ran round the thistle again. Then the puppy began a series of short charges at the stick, running a little way forwards each time and a long way back, and barking hoarsely all the while, till at last it sat down a good way off, panting, with its tongue hanging out of its mouth and its great eyes half shut. There we have the giant puppy and Alice hiding behind the thistle. The thistle. As Aaron says, the best laid plans of rabbits and lizards gang after glay. All right. It seemed to Alice a good opportunity for making her escape, so she set off at once, and ran till she was quite tired and out of breath, until the puppy's bark sounded quite faint in the distance. And yet what a dear little puppy it was, said Alice, as she leant against the buttercup to rest herself, and fanned herself with one of its leaves. I should have liked teaching it tricks very much, if only I'd been the right size to do it. Oh dear, I'd really forgotten that I've got to grow up again. Let's see, how is it to be managed? I suppose I ought to eat or drink something or other, but the great question is what? I don't know, if you would just have some order and method to your process, you would have taken one of those cakes and put it in your pocket for later if you ever needed to shrink again, and you would have kept hold of the rest of that bottle since you only drank half of it. But we cannot expect order and method from Alice, unfortunately. Really, from anyone in Wonderland. No. I always think that the best thing you can say for Alice is that Wonderland is a bit like being in a dream.
Yeah.
And so you're just not capable of making sensible decisions.
Yeah. I mean, he does establish rather early on that her mind is a little bit confused.
Disordered.
From what it
Do
what
cats
it
eat bats? Do bats eat cats? Michelle, do bats eat cats? Michelle's a bat expert.
Ooh. That's cool.
Well, she's at very least a bat enthusiast. I guess I don't know if she would consider herself an expert. She knows more about bats than I do, that's for sure. The great question certainly was, what? Alice looked all round her at the flowers and the blades of grass, but she did not see anything that looked like the right thing to eat or drink under the circumstances. There was a large mushroom growing near her, about the same height as herself, and when she had looked under it and on both sides of it and behind it, it occurred to her that she might as well look and see what was on the top of it. She stretched herself up on tiptoe and peeped over the edge of the mushroom, and her eyes immediately met those of a large caterpillar that was sitting on the top with its arms folded, quietly smoking a long hookah, and taking not the smallest notice of her or of anything else. Tila says, first Michelle says, it could happen. Cats eat bats. So she's confirming cats definitely will eat bats. I unfortunately have witnessed a cat trying to eat a bat once. It's very upsetting.
God, yeah.
We did manage to prevent the cat from its goal. Well, I guess she was at least trying to attack it. Who knows whether she would have eaten it once she had achieved that part of the goal. And then Tila says, I remember at a mother-daughter book club where we were reading this, we had a huge discussion about whether Alice was dreaming on a psychedelic trip or had fallen into a fairy ring. I vote for dreaming out of those three. I actually think that the belief that this book was supposed to be like an opium trip is unfounded.
Yeah.
Apparently, I mean, at least from what I've read, which is not extensive, but there's no evidence to suggest that Lewis Carroll did any sort of substances.
Oh, really?
Also, I think that, yeah, apparently that's
I
at
just
least
assumed a lot of aristocrats did at the time.
right. Yeah, but he wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't that rich, right? He wasn't like
True, but
he
did
wasn't
they
a
have like wealthy friends? I don't know.
probably. But
I don't,
anyway,
I don't know.
I'm sure
but
a lot of people also didn't. There's a lot of Victorian like propriety going on still, and like everything must be just.
I suppose.
Anyway, from what I've read, there's no indication that he did any sort of substances, and also, I think there is a tendency overall in culture when we see something very strange to go like, "Oh, what were you on?" or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, we must allow for the possibility of people just being very creative.
It does certainly read like a children's story.
uh, Michelle says, vaccinate your cat to prevent rabies. Tila says, with the looking glass, it seems more likely to be a dream, and he was pretty poor considering, I think.
Oh, really?
Although he did not have a lot of illness issues, both mental and physical. Also, he made this story up originally for a child. So, although I'm sure he added, once he wrote it down, I'm sure he added a lot of like weird little social commentary, which we've already run into. Okay. Chapter 5. Advice from a Caterpillar. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last, the caterpillar took the hookah from its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. And I'm sorry, I'm just not capable of reading this without aping the Disney version of the caterpillar, which there are a lot of issues with the Disney version of Alice in Wonderland, but I feel like their depiction of the caterpillar is pretty great. Who are you? Said the caterpillar. Oh, and I forgot to show you the caterpillar.
Yes.
Also, a hookah usually just has tobacco in it. It's not. I don't think that hookahs are usually used for other things.
Well, and certainly when, because of all the like mushrooms, the substances that she eats and drinks, and like
I think people just went like, you eat and drink things that makes you feel strange. There's mushrooms in it. Yeah. There's a caterpillar. It's
in the like 1960s, people latched onto it.
Yeah, especially with the song, the Jefferson Airplane song.
Is that the Go Ask Alice?
Yes, it's called "The White Rabbit." Is the name of the song. That's the one that says, "Go ask Alice."
Oh, that's where it comes from.
I think she knows.
Go Ask Alice is the name of the book.
One thing makes you larger. One thing makes you small.
Right, yeah.
Whatever those meant. Those might not be the exact lyrics, but something like that.
Right. Yeah, that was
I think
that was what I was referring to.
Yes. Yeah. The book is called Grass House, which I think is in reference to the song, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. We've sold it.
They're both in reference to the.
Never read the book because it sounds like nonsense. Okay. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Alice replied rather shyly, I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then. What do you mean by that? Said the caterpillar sternly. Explain yourself. I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir, said Alice, because I'm not myself, you see. I don't see, said the caterpillar. I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, Alice replied very politely, for I can't understand it myself to begin with, and being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing. It isn't, said the caterpillar. Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet, said Alice. But when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will someday, you know, and then after that into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel a little queer, won't you? Not a bit, said the caterpillar. Well, perhaps your feelings may be different, said Alice. All I know is it would feel very queer to me. You, said the caterpillar contemptuously. Who are you? Which brought them back again to the beginning of the conversation. Alice felt a little irritated at the caterpillars making such very short remarks, and she drew herself up and said very gravely, I think you ought to tell me who you are first. Why? Said the caterpillar. Here was another puzzling question, and as Alice could not think of any good reason, and as the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away. Come back, the caterpillar called after her. I've something important to say. This sounded promising, certainly. Alice turned and came back again. Keep your temper, said the caterpillar. Is that all? Said Alice, swallowing down her anger as well as she could. No, said the caterpillar. Alice thought she might as well wait, as she had nothing else to do, and perhaps, after all, it might tell her something worth hearing. For some minutes it puffed away without speaking, but at last it unfolded its arms, took the hookah out of its mouth again, and said, So you think you're changed, do you? I'm afraid I am, sir, said Alice. I can't remember things as I used, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together. Can't
eating things.
But right. It's not just happening randomly, Alice. You are definitely involved. Can't remember what things, said the caterpillar. Well, I've tried to say how doth a little busy bee, but it all came out different, Alice replied in a very melancholy voice. Repeat your old Father William, said the caterpillar. Alice folded her hands and began. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turn a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box, allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. You are old, said the youth. One could hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs. Then we have several illustrations of the various things that Father William does. Standing on his head, doing a back somersault in at the door, and then eating an entire goose, and also balancing an eel on the end of his nose. You know, I remembered that this poem was from this book, but I'd forgotten that it was one of the ones she got wrong.
Yeah.
I've never looked up what the real You Are Old Father William sounds like. But we, when I was in high school in choir, we did an arrangement of this version. We did an arrangement of the Jabberwocky as well that I thought was terrible.
Oh.
This one was not so bad. You are old, Father William, the young man said. That's
funny.
Really all I remember of it.
I know the original is much more moral. I don't really remember very much about it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's more moral, less nonsense.
Yes.
That is not said right, said the caterpillar. Not quite right, I'm afraid, said Alice timidly. Some of the words have got altered. Yeah, Tila, I think that's the verse. She said there's a strange Jabberwocky SSA arrangement. Obviously, the one my choir did was SATB, but still, it was kind of, like you said, sort of Aaron Copland style. It's very strange. Doesn't seem appropriate to the material. This one was done in kind of the style of sort of a choral song, an older, I don't know. The style of the Father William one we did seemed more to fit it. But anyway. I tried Googling once choral arrangement Jabberwocky, and I found several performances which were of the version that I learned. So, but I think it's not very good. Also, now every time I hear any reference to Jabberwocky, I hear it in my head in that stupid melody. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, SATB is soprano, alto, tenor, bass. In case anyone was confused by that terminology. It is wrong from beginning to end, said the caterpillar decidedly, and there was silence for some minutes. The caterpillar was the first to speak. What size do you want to be? It asked. Oh, I'm not particular as to size, Alice hastily replied. Only one doesn't like changing so often, you know. I don't know, said the caterpillar. Alice said nothing. She had never been so much contradicted in her life before, and she felt she was losing her temper. Are you content now? Said the caterpillar. Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you don't mind, said Alice. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be. It is a very good height indeed, said the caterpillar angrily, rearing itself upright as it spoke. It was exactly 3 inches high. But I'm not used to it, pleaded poor Alice in a piteous tone, and she thought to herself, I wish the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended. I wish people wouldn't get offended when I say offensive things to them.
Yes, exactly. People are so sensitive.
You'll get used to it in time, said the caterpillar, and it put the hookah into its mouth and began smoking again. This time Alice waited patiently until it chose to speak again. In a minute or two, the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and yawned once or twice, and shook itself. Then it got down off the mushroom and crawled away in the grass, merely remarking as it went, One side will make you grow taller, and one side will make you grow shorter. One side of what? The other side of what? Thought Alice to herself. Of the mushroom, said the caterpillar, just as if she had asked it out loud, and in another moment it was out of sight. Yes, Tila, very British attitude. As Aaron points out, shortness may feel like oppression when one is used to being tall.
And having other opinions expressed when one is used to not having anyone else talk to you.
Alice remained looking thoughtfully at the mushroom for a minute, trying to make out which were the 2 sides of it. And as it was perfectly round, she found this a very difficult question. However, at last she stretched her arms around it as far as they would go and broke off a bit of the edge with each hand. And now, which is which, she said to herself, and nibbled a little of the right-hand bit to try the effect. Finally, she's getting the idea. The next moment, she felt a violent blow underneath her chin. It had struck her foot. She was a good deal frightened by this very sudden change, and she felt that there was no time to be lost, as she was shrinking rapidly. So she set to work at once to eat some of the other bit. Her chin was pressed so closely against her foot that there was hardly room to open her mouth, but she did it at last and managed to swallow a morsel of the left-hand bit. Come, my head's free at last, said Alice with a tone of delight, which changed into alarm in another moment, when she found that her shoulders were nowhere to be found. All she could see when she looked down was an immense length of neck, which seemed to rise like a stalk out of the sea of green leaves that lay far below her. Where can all that green stuff be? Said Alice. And what can all that green stuff be? Said Alice. And where have my shoulders got to? And oh, my poor hands! How is it I can't see you? She was moving them about as she spoke, but no result seemed to follow, except a little shaking among the distant green leaves. As there seemed to be no chance of getting her hands up to her neck, she tried to get her head down to them, and was delighted to find that her neck would bend about easily in any direction like a serpent. She had just succeeded in curving it down into a graceful zigzag, and was going to dive in among the leaves when which she found to be nothing but the tops of the trees underneath which she had been wandering, when a sharp hiss made her draw back in a hurry. A large pigeon had flown into her face and was beating her violently with its wings. "Serpent!" screamed the pigeon. "I'm not a serpent," said Alice indignantly. "Let me alone." "Serpent, I say again!" repeated the pigeon, but in a more subdued tone, and added with a kind of sob, "I've tried every way, and nothing seems to suit them." "I haven't the least idea what you're talking about," said Alice. "I've tried the roots of trees, and I've tried banks, and I've tried hedges," the pigeon went on without attending to her. "But those serpents, there's no pleasing them." Alice was more and more puzzled, but she thought there was no use in saying anything more until the pigeon had finished. As if it wasn't trouble enough hatching the eggs," said the pigeon, "but I must be on the lookout for serpents day and night. Why, I haven't had a wink of sleep these 3 weeks. No one has any compassion on my nerves." "I'm very sorry you've been annoyed," said Alice, who was beginning to see its meaning. And just as I'd taken to the highest tree in the wood," continued the pigeon, raising its voice to a shriek, "and just as I was thinking I should be free of them at last, they must needs come wriggling down from the sky. Ugh! Serpent!" "Well, I'm not a serpent, I tell you," said Alice. I'm a... "Well, what are you?" said the pigeon. "I can see you're trying to invent something." I'm a little girl," said Alice rather doubtfully, as she remembered the number of changes she had gone through that day. "A likely story indeed," said the pigeon in the tone of deepest contempt. "I've seen a good many little girls in my time, and never one with such a neck as that. No, you're a serpent, and there's no use denying it. I suppose you'll be telling me next that you've never tasted an egg." "I have tasted eggs, certainly," said Alice, who was a very truthful child. "But little girls eat eggs quite as much as serpents do, you know." "I don't believe it," said the pigeon. "But if they do, why, then they're a kind of serpent. That's all I can say." It's hard to argue with that logic.
It really is, yeah.
Serpents eat eggs, therefore, if you eat eggs, you must be a serpent.
Yes.
All right. Hold on, I must refresh my libation. Okay. This was such a new idea to Alice that she was quite silent for a minute or two, which gave the pigeon the opportunity of adding, "You're looking for eggs, I know that well enough, but what does it matter to me whether you're a little girl or a serpent?" "It matters a good deal to me," said Alice hastily, "but I'm not looking for eggs as it happens, and if I was, I shouldn't want yours. I don't like them raw." "Well, be off then," said the pigeon in a sulky tone, as it settled down again into its nest. Alice crouched down among the trees as well as she could, for her neck kept getting entangled among the branches, and every now and then she had to stop and untwist it. After a while, she remembered that she still held the pieces of mushroom in her hands, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one and then at the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter, until she had succeeded in bringing herself down to her usual height.
Yay.
Finally! Good job, Alice!
It only took 2 chapters.
But we're actually in the 5th chapter of the book now.
Oh.
Or the 6th.
I forgot. You're not
Yes.
announcing chapters.
No, I've been announcing the chapters, but
oh, really?
It's just today is the second reading, but chapter advice. Oh, I didn't read Advice from a Caterpillar. Maybe I didn't. Did I not announce that?
Oh, I think you did.
We're currently reading chapter 5, Advice from a Caterpillar.
No, I think you did. I think I didn't catch that it was a chapter difference.
Yes, they're relatively short chapters in this book, and it's getting very dark, but luckily we're almost done. I'll work out better lighting for tomorrow, I promise. It was so long since she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first. But she got used to it in a few minutes and began talking to herself as usual. "Come, there's half my plan done now. How puzzling all these changes are. I'm never sure what I'm going to be from one minute to another. However, I've got back to my right size. The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is that to be done, I wonder? As she said this, she came suddenly upon an open place with a little house in it about 4 feet high. Whoever lives here, thought Alice, it'll never do to come upon them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits. So she began nibbling at the right-hand bit again, and did not venture to go near the house till she had brought herself down to 9 inches high. You just got to the right size again, Alice.
Seriously.
But at least this time she had the sense to keep bits of the mushroom with her, and to keep track of which was which, so that she can, and she's nibbling and moderating her size. So she's learned how to actually control it finally. So that's good. Okay, yes. It's very dramatic mood lighting right now. Yeah, I will get a better lighting setup tomorrow. Sorry, I meant to do that today, but I wasn't feeling well last night. And so I slept in quite late and then had a very easy day just because, the best thing you can do if you're not feeling well is rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I have time. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to today's reading. For those of you who may tune in later, if you are new to the stream, I am a musician and writer. There are links below to my Bandcamp store where you can buy both my music and also an audiobook I released with short stories that I wrote and are read by me and my friends. You can also see in the description of the video links to playlists for the other books I've read for this series. In case anyone is watching this with youngsters in the future, I'm trying to keep the commentary and chat child appropriate for this book, but the other ones are less child appropriate in terms of language. We don't talk about anything super inappropriate. There's just maybe some cussing. Well, some of the books are definitely for adults. So, but even the Little Prince is technically for children, but it is real heavy. So we definitely didn't shy away from talking about the commentary and the imagery in that. So. Aaron, yes, a clip light possibly would help this situation. I'm going to try a few different options, but if you have a clip light to spare, I would love to try it out. It would be worth giving it a try at least. Yes, Tila, you all behaved yourselves very well today. Well done, dear. Go have a biscuit. Anyway, that'll be it for today. I hope that I will see you all tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific again. Go to the playlist to click set a reminder to remind you to have YouTube's remind you and send you a notification when I do more videos. So on that note, I will see you all tomorrow. Bye. Oh, wait, hold on. You guys didn't get to see Pepper. I would just hate for there to be a single stream. I know it's very dark, but you can kind of see how cute he is, right? Yeah, he's with his friend Gavin the mouse. Okay, now we're done.